Hey, welcome to Film Fanatics, three film geeks discussing movies, both new and old. My name is Dan.
My name is Justin.
And I'm Joe.
This week, two franchises more than half a century old give us new movies. We've got James Bond in Spectre and Charlie Brown in the Peanuts movie. Robert Redford plays veteran newsman Dan Rather in Truth, and we possibly uncover some truth in the Oscar-winning documentary Citizenfour. Our double feature of older films is Joe's pick for old classic, Jackie Brown, and our Oscar A to Z film, The Battle of Algiers. And in honor of Spectre's release, and to a lesser degree even Citizenfour, we'll be tackling our top 5 spy films this week as well. First up, though, is Spectre, the latest James Bond entry, and a big $73 million opening weekend for that. Falling a bit short of Skyfall, but Joe, let's hear about Spectre.
All right, Spectre is the 24th James Bond film. It features Daniel Craig once again in his fourth and possibly final performance as the title character, and Christoph Waltz plays Ernst Blofeld. This is not a spoiler. It was directed by Sam Mendes, who, as you guys know, directed Skyfall, and the story features Bond in his first encounter with the global criminal organization Spectre, making the group's first appearance in the franchise since Diamonds Are Forever, back in 1971. And it also ties Craig's series of films together in this overarching storyline, kind of culminating them and giving him sort of a send-off. And Ralph Fiennes as M, along with many of the other recurring cast members as well. If I had to say one thing about this movie, it would be tone. Tone. Now, I think that...
In a good way or bad way, I'm intrigued.
Well, that's why I start off with tone.
Yeah.
Because, this film is following the previous Bond films, which, for the most part, have been a lot more serious and, I want to say, in air quotes, grounded in reality, as much as Bond can be. But
That's fair.
It's grit. I mean, it's still ridiculous, but it's much grittier than most previous Bond films. That's been consistent with this. But this one has that for certain periods of the film, but then randomly just gets goofy all of a sudden, like it's one of the earlier installments, which, on one hand, I want to be okay with them doing that, because they're kind of playing homage to the goofiness, but it really doesn't fit with the rest of the movie, and it really makes it jarring and kind of creates a lot of weird pacing issues. Plus the fact that, if it's going to be this big send-off that's connecting all these other movies, well, the main villain, for as iconic as he is, and for as well-acted as he is, his motivations are weak. They're weak, man. They're really weak. The twist isn't really that great. He's probably the best thing about the movie, but he's really not in it that much. And it's kind of resolved sort of, I don't know, kind of anticlimactically as well. But then again, it's also, some decent action. The performances are good. And I did find myself entertained a lot of the time with it. But it was much more disappointing than I was expecting. It's all on the line for me. I leave this one with a B-.
Okay. Well, I do think that the Sam Mendes directing is great in this movie. There's a lot of really cool shots, a lot of great landscapes that are nice, and there's strong performances, obviously, from Craig, and also Ben Whishaw, who plays Q. I thought did a really good job as well.
Yeah.
And like Skyfall, it has this really great opening scene. It really hooks you with that. However, you're absolutely right. What comes next is a mixed bag. First of all, the Sam Smith song is terrible.
Oh my gosh.
I've never heard that before. I knew there was some back and forth about it when it came out.
Was that the Bond opening for this one?
Yeah, that's the writings on the wall.
I think if I had to... I think that summarizes how I felt about the whole movie, because it was overly long, it was cheesy, and while I, on one hand, want to be okay with the octopus thing, I have to admit, and I know many people felt this, I feel like anybody under 40 is going to be thinking tentacle porn. It's kind of distracting, honestly.
It's unintentionally hilarious, though.
It is, but the intro is just too long, and you're right, the song wasn't really that good.
And I like Sam Smith, but he, to me, is the wrong choice for a big bombastic Bond song.
Especially after that really intense intro, which was good.
Yeah, so that sort of sets it off on like a questionable pace. And then what comes next is, sort of like... The comedy pieces I didn't really understand at all, because you're right, they didn't fit. I thought Christoph Waltz was great, as always. I don't think that needs to be said. But not only are his intentions questionable, but he hardly gets used. He's in this film less than Javier Bardem was in Skyfall.
Well, he also, and I'll be honest, I know his plan isn't really well defined. Or
it's kind of ridiculous when it is.
Or even that evil. I want to control...
Well, I mean, he wants to kill Bond.
Well,
that's
but
not great.
That's the only real bad thing. She does evil things to Bond, but his plan to take over the world is like, oh, so you want to control information to make the world spy organizations more organized. Cool?
Yeah, it's not a great motivation. I didn't think that the actress playing the Bond girl was that engaging. and it is
asleep through most of the
about
movie.
15 minutes too long.
Or at least
But through it all, it is entertaining.
yeah.
And that's all you can really expect at minimum from a Bond film.
It's true.
So I put this one in the good, not great category. It's a B. Justin?
This is probably in the top 5 most conflicting grades for me this year. So where this one ends up by year's end, hard to say. I'll start this off with something positive. It's not the worst entry in the Craig franchise. That honor will forever go to Quantum.
Oh, that's true. It's not as boring as Quantum.
But still, I find myself asking, why Sony? Why? Craig's interpretation of Bond was so detailed and complex and gritty. It broke all these conventions of what we had come to expect from Bond from all these people like Timothy Dalton, Roger Moore, Pierce Brosnan. Mm-hmm. And it could have been a really great conclusion to a saga that began in 2006. Mm-hmm. And yet we get the most by-the-numbers expected Bond movie ever.
Pretty generic plot.
There were so many instances in this movie where I felt like I was watching a Pierce Brosnan Bond film that just seemed to creep into the Daniel Craig one.
I wouldn't even go that far, because even his movies were more entertaining and lively than this.
But I mean, the movie's long. The sound is atrocious at times. Sam Mendes is a great director, and he really brings a lot of it to life. The opening scene is absolutely fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
The first scene was good.
The song is awful. Leah Seydoux is the new Bond girl. Mm-hmm. Zero chemistry.
Yeah, man. She was bad.
It just really feels like unpolished afterthought. And I feel like this movie could have been something. Christoph Waltz was good when he showed up, but most of the time it's just them chasing Spectre instead of going after him until we get the ridiculously obvious twist that I am, for the most part, blaming the marketing for. It's an incredibly disappointing end, and if it really is the conclusion to his era, all I have to say is Craig deserves so much better. I leave Spectre with a C+.
Well, to be fair, I mean, it's hard to blame Sony for saying, you know, you're saying, oh, they're not giving him a fitting ending. I don't know that anyone really, until the release of the movie, thought that this might be his last entry in the franchise.
You could tell that they were trying to build an endpoint. Like this was as far as it was going. Craig's been at this since 2006. Let's start putting the pieces together. And you can definitely tell if they had actually spent some time on this instead of overworking the budget, there could have been a really good movie here. Instead, it's just kind of mediocre.
Well, the actual plot of the movie is incredibly by the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not crazy enough for a Bond movie, and it's not intelligent enough for the more modern Bond movies. It's not. It's a very it's a very generic thing, you know. And like I said, the villain's plan, if you're going to use Blofeld, okay, you know, it's
give him something to do.
You want to do something contemporary as some sort of commentary on things. That's fine, but give us a lot more. We want to do something over the top with a big laser gun. At least it's over the top with a big laser gun. Mm-hmm. And here we don't get. Like, I'll be honest, the movie didn't really pick up until he showed up, but that's almost toward the end of the movie.
Yeah, I mean, you've gone through almost an hour and a half of the film.
You really need him, and then he kind of ends with him sort of being taken out too quickly. And it seemed to me the way they ended it, they could go into another movie exploring him as the main villain, possibly. Mm-hmm. You know, which I didn't really think this was going to be the last one. You know, I thought if you reveal Spectre again, they're like the main Bond villain, so...
You could tell it was either going to be the end or the beginning of the end.
Yeah, I mean, I think one more movie would have made more sense, but I know Craig said he expressed less interest in doing it now because I'm guessing it's maybe too physically hard for him.
It's hard to say. He said that. He said, I'd be willing to come back. I don't know.
Yeah, he's been a little back and forth on it.
Yeah, it's very much, we know Bond will be back in some way, shape, or form. Yeah. If it's going to be Daniel Craig, great. If it's going to be Idris Elba, bring it. I'm very curious to see how that would play out.
I'm cool with that. People were up in arms about it. I don't see what's wrong with that. Weird spy stuff. He can be black,
I'm fine with that.
He gets a new face, whatever.
Yeah.
He's got to hide out. Fine. People were like, you're James Bond? What?
Well,
whatever.
That's stupid.
You know, I just...
We survived the really goofy years of James Bond. Why not?
Yeah, why not? I mean, hey, why not? I'm cool with that. I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing Craig do another one or two. I think he's got... Sean Connery was older than that before he quit. So, you know...
Hey, but they were also cranking them out a lot more frequently.
This is true.
In the Sean Connery era.
That's true.
I mean, this is 3 to 4 years between each installment.
That's true.
9 years, we've done 4 movies.
Yeah, as opposed to
There's a lot of ground to cover there, and
Right.
Doing 10 movies in 10.
Right, exactly. Well, look, you guys are certainly more versed in the Bond universe than I am. I've only seen the Daniel Craig entries.
Yeah.
So, maybe my grade's a little high based on what is to be expected with the franchise.
I'll put it this way.
I was entertained with it. It's stupid, though.
Well,
It's a lot dumber than Skyfall.
I thought about a B- until the very, very ending, and then I was like, no.
Okay.
This is not how Craig should go out.
I was kind of on the edge of that too, but I thought there was enough good directing there. I think if you look at the whole franchise, Dan, a lot of those movies are dumb too, but there's just so much more energy at least, and there's so much fun. Even the goofiest ones know what they are. Like if you saw every Bond movie, I can't imagine this one would be at the top of your list.
Right. Well, it's already third of the 3 that I've seen, so
There you go.
so that doesn't bode too well. All right, up next is the Peanuts movie. And in this, Charlie Brown and his friends Linus, Lucy Schroeder, and many more, plus his sister Sally, and of course his best friend Snoopy, make their way to the big screen for the first time in decades with the Peanuts movie. Of course, this is based on Charles Schultz comic strip started 65 years ago that begat dozens of TV specials and countless tie-in products. This particular installment was co-written by Schultz's son and grandson, Craig and Brian, and directed by Horton Hears a Who's Steve Martino.
Oh.
I really liked about this movie that it looks like the old shows and the comics. We talked about this briefly last week when we were talking about 3D, or maybe that was even an off-the-air comment, but I really liked the way that they approached this, making the characters look like they do in the specials.
As opposed to like a more human...
Yeah, because anything that kids are used to is basically like the Christmas special, the Thanksgiving special maybe, certainly the Halloween. I mean, they're all from basically the 60s and 70s, and so they have this retro look in the movie that I really liked. And with that, they also didn't update the characters or technology.
Not really.
Snoopy still has a typewriter, not a laptop. Other than, like, they put the recycling bin out in the one scene, I thought, all right, well, that's kind of more modern than the 70s for sure. And the Meghan Trainor song that plays, like, 3 times in the movie really sticks out like a sore thumb with the smooth jazz
Painfully.
of the classic soundtrack. But other than that, it's pretty much steeped in the Charlie Brown Peanuts tradition, and as such, it's essentially a greatest hits and bits of the series. And really, it's vignettes revolving around Charlie Brown's nervousness about the little red-haired girl that just moved in across the street. So everything sort of ties around that, but it's really just a vignette-based film. For me, I've never been much of a Red Baron fan. I like Snoopy, and I like him in Woodstock, but I honestly think young kids are going to get bored with those sequences. There's a lot of them in this movie, and I don't think they're prominently featured in any of the main TV specials that kids know. So I think the Peanuts movie is very good. It's a good entry for kids. Parents will appreciate it more, I think. I leave it with a B. Justin? That was in my top 5, by the way. I think it was my number 1 most anticipated film of the year. So for me, it was a little bit disappointing. So maybe I was a little critical of it in that regard. But I did enjoy it.
We'll see.
But
you are a Peanuts fan.
I'm a huge Peanuts fan. I mean, I have, the collected works of the comic strips.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah. So I like a lot of things with it, but a few things we're missing. Justin, let's hear about it.
Well, unlike you, Dan, I've never been a real big fan of the whole Peanuts mythos. Personally, I thought it was kind of depressing. I thought Snoopy's a great character, but let's be honest, it's basically about a character who loses repeatedly and gets nothing out of it. But what I liked about this is it gives a new generation Peanuts in a way that's accessible and very, very fun. The story sticks to its roots. It doesn't try anything, doesn't try to modernize it like you mentioned, which I think is both good for nostalgia but also kind of a hindrance because the fact that it plays out in vignettes kind of makes it a little bit stop and start and very episodic at times, which is great for a comic strip, not so great for a movie. But once the pieces start coming together more, I thought the ending was actually really good.
Oh yeah, I was crying at the end.
And there's plenty of fan service. I just wish the story was more consistent. But I did love the animation. I think, with the exception of the Meghan Trainor song, which is irritating for lack of a better word, it's pretty standard fun family entertainment, and I definitely had my share of good laughs. I leave with a B as well.
Yeah, it's timeless in that way, and that's why I like that they didn't modernize it. But the Meghan Trainor song just makes it so like, okay, this is mid 2010s. You know, and just like Sam Smith, I like Meghan Trainor, it's fine, but it didn't belong in this movie. Joe, how did Peanuts grab you?
I'd say it grabbed me quite well, Dan.
Oh, good.
I not a Peanuts fan, really.
Okay.
I mean, I liked Snoopy a little bit as a kid. I read a couple of the strips here and there, saw some specials. Mm-hmm. Never was a huge fan of it, though. Although I did watch The Great Pumpkin again recently, and I realized that a lot of that humor goes over your head when you're a kid.
Oh, yeah.
So it's more of an adult in terms of a lot of its
yes.
a lot of its humor.
And Peanuts always has been. Like, those early strips were very adult and mature, especially compared to what was in the newspapers at the time.
Oh yeah, just all the stuff about like about elections and politics was hilarious. And I'm thinking, well, when I was 6, of course I didn't get this.
Right.
Know? So it's funny that I appreciate a lot more that I'm older. So I've heard the one, like the little bit I heard that might have been negative about this one is kind of what you guys said. It is kind of in vignettes, and it's basically sort of a greatest hits of the comics. Mm-hmm. But for me, I didn't really notice that because I don't really know anything about that.
And the kids wouldn't either, and that's why I thought it was fine to do it.
And I can see the vignettes a little bit, but the way it's constructed, it does kind of form the story because the whole plot is him being nervous about the red-haired girl and trying to find ways to impress her and build up to it. So I thought it kind of worked, actually. Okay. And I guess in that sense, it's not overly ambitious, but I thought that it was very solid, though, in its execution. There wasn't really anything wrong with it. I was smiling the whole movie. So I couldn't really be negative. I thought Charlie Brown was a great character. And I mean, I could see some of the negativity that you could find in the strips, but I thought that the movie was actually very hopeful, and it left a great message for kids and for adults, too. I thought the ending was fantastic. I thought it was amazing. And really, I thought everything building up to that was great. And the Red Baron stuff I thought was fine. But I think you need
I figured you would probably enjoy that.
World War I reference, plus, some action for some kids.
Yeah.
But that might be bored with other things. I don't know. But it worked for me. I thought Snoopy had to have something to do because if he didn't do that, I guess...
But he did have stuff to do, which is one of the main...
Yeah, he was trying to sneak into the school, and...
He was helping Charlie Brown out.
Yeah,
and
he's
also,
actually in this movie as much as Charlie Brown, pretty much.
More or less, yeah.
Well, which is probably the way you should do it.
The way to go.
No, I really enjoyed this one. I didn't really have any major problems with it. I leave it with an A-.
Oh, okay. Well, good. It maybe made a Peanuts fan out of you.
I would...
for somebody that doesn't care much for the other stuff.
No, I mean, I was more interested in actually checking stuff out afterwards. So, I mean, I think it's actually probably better introducing new fans than it is for older ones.
Well, I think older people will get that nostalgia factor out of it.
Oh, definitely.
Which is really, I think, all that a kid's movie can expect. Be cute and funny for the kids, but have adults enjoy it. And I think a lot of the entries we get in that department sort of miss the mark on the adult part.
Well, then how would this compare for something like Peabody, then?
I think very similarly, actually. Uh-huh. Because, Peabody comes from the Rocky and Bullwinkle show from the 50s, and I think, you guys had never even heard of Peabody and Sherman when that movie came out. Mm-hmm. Kids certainly don't know. I mean, kids are at least familiar with Snoopy and Charlie Brown, if nothing else. Even if they've never seen a special, the greeting card line alone,
My counter to that would be, you're right, and that's true. However, I think the main difference is Peabody's trying to tell a more original story.
Yeah.
Whereas Peanuts is as we all three of us mentioned, basically giving a collection of here's all the...
Totally disagree with that. As somebody, Justin...
Go on.
You've only seen, 3 Peabody shorts ever. I mean, that's all they did is go back in time and fix things and whatever. And it's the same basic concept as this. It strung a lot of what they would do on the show together with a
wasn't the plot of the movie
plot.
But there was a more consistent storyline. You can tell there was a lot more originality in that regard. They didn't focus on
if I remember,
the present day.
In the movie with Peabody, wasn't one of the conflicts him being concerned he couldn't be a father because he was a dog?
Well, that's true. That is true.
There's something like that.
You're
whereas,
right.
Peanuts didn't
that
really...
sort of tied it. That sort of bookended it. But everything in between was them traveling back in time and trying to fix what they did, which is what they did in the show.
Yeah,
you're right. That was a thread sort of throughout that this didn't have.
That pushed a little further than the cartoon.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. Yeah, I mean, you're right. I guess the Peanuts really didn't have anything new to the existing stories.
That's what I hear.
But, I mean...
I thought it worked very well personally.
Yeah, it did, because I think it didn't borrow really much from the most well-known of the series. Like, it didn't really do anything related to the Christmas show. And other than Linus saying, like, oh, I hope the new neighbor likes the Great Pumpkin.
That's true.
You know, other than that, there's no really callbacks to those specific specials.
There was the tree, the villainous tree that steals the kites. They mentioned that once or twice.
Well, that's kind of a perennial. That's in all the specials. Yeah, you're right. They did talk about that. But no, I think it's a good entry for kids and adults. But hopefully it will bring more kids to the Peanuts table.
Do you think it's worth, maybe they could do a sequel and try to maybe do something more original with? Or is it not? Should I do that?
Personally, I think the goal of the movie was to establish a new television franchise.
That I can see.
That's my guess.
Maybe some new shorts.
Or some new shorts. Some new specials. Something more along those lines than a film franchise.
Huh. Well, how well did the movie do?
It did well. I mean, it opened in the mid 40 millions.
Not bad at all.
So, not bad against Spectre.
Yeah.
I'll say.
You know?
No, I think it will bring new people to the table, but I feel like if they did a sequel that tried to do more originality, I'm not sure if it would deviate, because the fans of the Peanuts series strip are super loyal, like to the point that the strip is still being circulated in papers today.
Yeah.
That I would be curious. I would be worried if they try to do something too original.
All right, well, let's move on here to Truth, and that's going to be with Justin.
In 2004, CBS News anchor Dan Rather and producer Mary Mapes, played by Robert Redford and Cate Blanchett, worked with a team of journalists to investigate a piece exposing George W. Bush's avoidance of the Vietnam War. However, shortly after the piece's broadcast, questions started to arise about the legitimacy of the piece, and soon the careers of nearly everyone involved is called into jeopardy. Topher Grace, cringe, also stars. This is a story with quite a bit
Or at least mention Dennis Quaid. He was good.
Oh, discount
and
Kevin
Dennis
Costner.
Quaid. Fair enough.
You're going to mention Topher Grace. Come on.
Don't forget your discount Costner. That's what he is.
This is a story with quite a bit to say, and not really sure what angle to take with it. Blanchett and Redford are completely devoted to their roles. I wouldn't expect any less from them. But the film gets bogged down with just about every segment at its disposal running on too long, and Grace gracing it up. In the most overacting I've probably seen all year. It has its moments, and there's nothing particularly mediocre about it. But the story, it has so much potential, and yet Truth just fizzles instead of pops. I leave Truth with a B-.
Oh.
Well, I remember when this all happened. I was a little bit post-college at this point, and it was, kind of a big deal. I was in the radio biz, so it was sort of, tagging along with that. And I remember thinking at the time that it seemed really unfair to Dan Rather, and this movie sort of confirmed what I thought about that already.
In abundance, yeah.
And it's funny, that the media spins it one way, and I always sort of thought, well, that doesn't sound right. And sure enough, this movie, sort of feeds into my original interpretation. I think the movie has a really slow start. The first half hour, at least, focuses on putting the story together. And let's call our sources. And it's very, technical, and it's a whole lot of who cares, really, to be honest. And then once the controversy behind it starts, it becomes a lot more engaging. There's some really good commentary on being in the news business today and media spin, and Redford does a fantastic job embodying Dan Rather's news persona, his speech patterns, everything. Topher Grace, useless as always. Worst part of the film by a mile. But I'm with you, Justin. I leave it with a B-. I think if it had a better build-up,
it would have been so much. It would have been so much stronger for it.
Yeah, or honestly, just a lot of that didn't even need to be there.
Well, what I thought was really frustrating about it was, you're right. In the first 30 minutes, it's a lot of build-up, introducing. Okay, we're gonna tackle this piece, and we're gonna focus on all these different people.
Mm-hmm.
And then they bench half their team to just focus on Robert Redford and Cate Blanchett's characters.
Right.
And I'm just thinking the entire time, why are you focusing primarily on Topher Grace as the sole side character of interest?
Mm-hmm.
I think he's annoying and frankly disagree with the majority of his opinions.
Yeah, it was sort of like that idiot that Sandra Bullock was dealing with in Our Brand is Crisis.
Oh my gosh!
Why?
What is he doing here?
It wasn't quite as comedic of a take as that, Joe. But still, like, he was just, being, like, annoying and stupid, and who cares?
Any comparisons to that movie don't bode well.
No. That's some truth right there, I would say.
Oh, wow.
But now, Joe didn't get to see this, of course. We're not just excluding him from the convo.
Oh,
but...
I'm still here. I'm still having a great time.
But they could have taken a lot of that stuff out, done the bits where they called Alan Alda on the phone.
Oh, Alan Alda's in it?
Alan Alda has
a
few scenes in it. Yeah, he's one of their like sources that sort of waffles back and forth once the controversy breaks.
He's always a source in these movies. He's like
typically
the guy you call, like,
yes.
I really know what's going on.
Well, I mean, he's Hawkeye, man.
Yeah, well, that's what he did when he got out. When he got back.
If you want a news source, you go to Hawkeye Pierce, obviously.
Oh man,
there was a lot of missed opportunities here, but good performances that I think they were really gunning for that Oscar audience with this movie.
Just missed it.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen for him. All right, up next, speaking of the Oscars, is our home media moment, and that is Citizenfour. This is an Oscar-winning political documentary directed by Laura Poitras and dealing with Edward Snowden and the NSA spying scandal, and takes us from Snowden's initial contact with Poitras and journalist Glenn Greenwald of The Guardian to the fallout from his whistleblowing and more. Starting in 2012, Poitras was working on a closing film in her post-9/11 trilogy. This one would be focusing on domestic surveillance when Snowden contacted her anonymously, and the entire documentary shifted gears to focus specifically on Snowden and is by far the better for it. Now, he's an affable guy who happened to want certain truths to reach the American public, regardless of the fallout for his family or himself, though he's clearly aware of what that fallout could mean. The movie doesn't necessarily paint him as a hero, though it's far from portraying him as a traitor like many in the media have. But Poitras acts as the narrator to the story, letting her expertise behind the lens tell the story with interviews, news pieces, and even her email correspondence with Snowden. And it's this structure that makes Citizenfour such a winner. The fact that it's all unfolding as the documentary is filmed and not as an epilogue, I think helps as well. There are definitely a couple times, though, when the doc loses its focus and treads into too technical territory. But it's funny that the same week we're reviewing the new Bond movie to also tackle a non-fiction, basically spy thriller, sort of at a much different angle. And I thought the documentary was certainly more gripping than Spectre, and certainly more terrifying as well. I leave Citizenfour with an A. Joe?
Well, unsurprisingly, Dan, I'm pretty much with you. I think the coolest thing about it is that it was actually unfolding while they're doing the documentary.
It added so much to it.
It's like they're doing a documentary while also doing a documentary. It's just a whole nother layer, and I thought that was really interesting and really brought the naturalism of what was going on, and I think really showed this guy in a really honest light. And I think he's quite a person. I think what he did was very brave, and I think there are definitely some things that really need to be said, and I think for the most part, a lot of those clips and interviews do work. I think that the direction flowed pretty well. Though, I guess maybe it was getting too technical. Sometimes I felt like it was a little much. Like I know that there is obviously a lot of heavy subject matter with this documentary, but whenever you have something like this, it's always a little one-sided.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, and I'm trying to be fair, because I look at this and there's so much that needs to be exposed. But if we were living in many other countries, Citizenfour couldn't even be made.
Right.
So
right.
I always kind of have that in the back of my mind with these things. So, for the most part, though, I thought it was really excellent. Some really enlightening information for me. I was really engaged and glad I got to watch it. I'm with you. I leave it with an A.
All right. Justin?
Well, is Edward Snowden a hero? I don't know. Is he a criminal? I'm also not sure. But that's not the point of what makes Citizenfour more than worthy of its Best Documentary Award at the Oscars. What is comes in its structure and its handling, offering an engrossing story of what it means to be watched and exploring both aspects of whether or not Snowden should be considered in either camp of hero or traitor. And I think the result is intense, suspenseful, and very, very much like a thriller in its overall structure. I think every second of this is fantastic. You're right about the technical aspect, but I think if you're going to film a documentary about Edward Snowden, I feel like at some points you kind of have to. Whether or not they go as far as they do is debatable, but I think it's an important aspect to it. I think it's incredibly well shot. I think the structure of it is fascinating. I love this documentary through and through. I leave Citizenfour with an A+.
Yeah, I mean, it obviously didn't affect my grade that much, But I do think in some of the instances where he's being interviewed by the gentleman from The Guardian, you know, some of those could have been trimmed maybe a little bit. But, Joe, you hit on it. You know, the fact that this documentary is, you know, sort of like, quote-unquote, in real time, you know, instead of Laura just saying, oh, well, you
During
know,
this
then
time.
then Snowden got the call, you know, or saw himself on the news, you know.
Yeah.
We get to be there in the hotel room and watch his face and sort of gauge his thoughts even without him saying anything yet.
And even witnessing all these little strange coincidences that really make you wonder how far are we being watched.
Yeah.
that's true.
Well, and that's why I think not only is it an important documentary, but it is a very engaging one, because there was so much to the story going on, and she really did a good job in editing it together to make a very cohesive and exciting movie. You know, a lot of documentaries are not quite that exciting.
True.
And what I also liked about it is, in a lot of the documentaries I watch, sometimes the filmmaker tries to interject their opinion too much, and because of that, it feels like they're trying to push it in one certain direction. I feel like this was a really nice balance between the two. One's not trying to overshadow the other, and you really do appreciate when Laura chooses to interject at the overall setup and how this interplay takes place in the hotel room.
Yeah, there's very little narration here. I mean, she inserts herself a little bit, but a lot of it is just the text on the screen, you know, telling you what day this was, or you know, or the email correspondence, which I thought was really cool. All right, well, there you go. We're gonna get into our top 5 now, and this is our top 5 spy movies. All right, Justin, we'll start with you for this.
All right, this was a surprisingly challenging list just because I was trying to think, okay, there's spies, there's secret agents, but where does the line go between spies and assassins? Which is
Well,
is a very tricky line.
You could categorize assassins under spies, I guess.
Which is why I didn't feel entirely comfortable about keeping Bourne on the list.
Well, I wouldn't expect him to be on your list anyway.
I like Bourne Identity, and Old Man's fine.
That was before Greengrass got a hold of it.
Yeah, okay, good point. Okay, so maybe one.
To kick this one off with an honorable mention, and trying to stay true to the spy format, is Roman Polanski's The Ghostwriter. This is a very underrated spy thriller. I think part of it is because it's Roman Polanski, another part of it is because it's an incredibly slow spy thriller, but I think I love the atmosphere of this. It's not about gunplay or racing to the next thrilling moment. It's about how complicated being thrust into this world of espionage can end up being in the most seemingly unlikely of ways. Number 5, Enter the Dragon. Bruce Lee went secret agent, ladies and gentlemen. And to be honest, I still think it's an incredibly groundbreaking film. It's a action premise that's been done many a time. I still see it in movies to this day.
Mortal Kombat.
And it basically became Mortal Kombat. But it's done really well. It's a really fun setup, and for the most part, even though Lee's acting ability is certainly not Oscar worthy, he's making it work, and I appreciate that. Number 4, Enemy of the State. This is the Will Smith movie I think just does not get enough love.
It's a good movie.
It's a very good movie, but nobody talks about it. Definitely perditioned.
You have something they want.
I think it very much speaks to the whole Citizenfour, like how well can we be watched, and the result is just absolutely terrifying.
That movie was way ahead of its time.
Oh, it was extremely ahead of its time. I can only watch clips of that movie because I get paranoid that quickly while watching it. Mm-hmm. Number 3, there's many a Bond film that can be put on this list, but I got to give it to the one that broke so many conventions, and that would be Skyfall.
Oh.
We've seen Bond as this infallible, borderline sexist hero, but...
Oh, he's sexist.
But what I love about Skyfall is it says, no, he's not infallible. He's got problems. He can be traumatized. And we see this emotional aspect of him through some degree of his backstory. And I think that's why it works so well, because they tried to make it a standalone story until Spectre came along and it became canon and a whole mess of other things happened. And number 2, as to be expected, Hannah. Saoirse Ronan. What's not to love?
I haven't watched that yet. I still haven't.
Yeah, get to it, man.
I'll get to it eventually.
Really awesome spy thriller. Fascinating to see what they do with such a small budget and downright intense at times. Mm-hmm. one of the few times I'm not entirely sure how to feel about Blanchett's performance. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it can happen.
Oh, wow.
But, I mean, for one of the most unique and original action thrillers, really, really fun stuff.
Take you're not a fan of that one, Dan?
No, we've talked about this on the show before. Hannah is. I gave it like a C, C+. It's not that great, but
All right.
he loves it. Joe, how about for you?
Well, I tried to do my list by spies doing spy things. So the main character had to be a spy, I guess, secret agent, whatever, doing something spy related. So obviously, got to kick off my list with Triple X.
Of course.
Okay.
It's pretty.
Why wouldn't you?
It's a little unconventional, but it's kind of awesome. It's
So is this an honorable mention or number 5?
It's number 5.
Wow.
I considered making an honorable mention,
Okay.
but I looked at the list and I'm like,
can
Nick
make
Cage,
it work.
he's a great secret agent. He's
Sure.
one of the more unique ones. Why not? So yeah, you gotta have Triple X on there. And kind of in a similar vein, surprisingly, Kingsman, kind of with a more satirical vein to it, I guess, but very enjoyable. And then, if I'm not going to do Bourne, but I have to do Bond at some point, so I'm going to put in Mission Impossible. Which Mission Impossible would that be? Be 3.
3.
Because, great villain, well executed. Awesome movie. Now, number 2, though, was a Bond movie. And I'm like, okay, which Bond movie I'm going to pick? Well, what's the most iconic, awesome one? Well, let's do Goldfinger, because, it's freaking...
Not Dr. No.
I consider Dr. No, because Dr. No is really, really good, but if I'm gonna pick, like, one Bond movie to recommend to somebody, like, it's Goldfinger.
That's probably the most hardcore spy one, though.
Dr. No... Dr. No is also kind of before it started to get silly.
This is true.
You know-
It was the first outing, but
Yeah, it's probably the more serious of the old ones. Dr. No is very good, definitely. I considered it, but Goldfinger is just kind of like one of the most awesome, over-the-top, grandiose spy movies. It really is, and it's just so much fun. But wasn't my number 1.
Interesting. All right, well, I'm going to have an honorable mention,
Okay.
and that is a Bourne movie. Because I like Jason Bourne, I like Matt Damon, and that is the Bourne Ultimatum.
Oh,
okay.
I think the third entry in the series is the best of the 4.
Oh.
I think it's exciting, it's engaging, and I think Damon does a great job.
Pretty good spy.
Yeah. My number 5, Justin's got Hannah. I have Salt.
Oh, God.
One that Justin does not care for.
With a passion.
Man.
I hate Salt so much.
I thought Salt was a fantastic movie. Angelina Jolie gave a great performance.
Bad name, though. You have to admit. Salt's kind of bad.
Well, what's her last name? What do you want? Evelyn Salt.
I want her to change.
Jackie Pepper. I mean,
That's Salt Sarge.
Hannah is her name, so they went with Hannah, and now Evelyn
Well,
Salt.
what's Hannah's last name, though?
Hannah.
Yeah, they don't give her a last name.
Hannah, okay.
You know?
Gotcha.
So my number 4 as well, Joe, is Kingsman,
Well,
the Secret Service.
I thought you went
Okay.
with that.
I mean, it was on my top 5 most anticipated, and thus far, the one that has disappointed me the least. I loved this movie. It was very, very fun. It added a new dimension for me for Colin Firth.
Action, yeah.
Action and a lot of comedy, too.
A lot of comedy.
Sometimes we see him dabble in the comedy a little bit, but but that was great. For number 3, I chose an Austin Powers movie.
Okay.
One of my favorite spies, really. I actually went with Goldmember.
Okay.
Now, on this show, I've probably at some point listed all of the different Austin Powers movies on the top 5. I know I've listed the first one a lot. But in terms of actual spying and spy movie conventions, I think Goldmember has the best. Because you really have 2 spies when you add his father into the mix, Michael Caine. And I enjoy Beyonce a lot as Foxy Cleopatra, so I chose that one. My number 2 is in the Bond canon as well.
Has to be.
And of course, I've only seen, like I mentioned, the Daniel Craig series. So for me, it has to go to Skyfall. I do think Skyfall's a great movie. What a villain in Javier Bardem.
Absolutely.
I would say his best performance, even ahead of No Country for Old Men and some of his others. And really quite high stakes, as we see by the end of the film.
Yeah.
So really a solid entry. Justin, what is your number 1?
Well, my number 1 has to go to the classic Alfred Hitchcock film, North by Northwest.
Makes sense.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I think this is, when it comes to spy movies, this is basically the full package. It's action-packed, it's really funny at times, and it's full of suspense. It's got a great cast, a really engrossing plot, and the climax speaks for itself.
Can't really say anything bad about that one.
Yeah. Joe, how about for you?
Went a different direction.
All right.
Was kind of reminded of this, but really one of the greatest spy films of our time, and one of the great Schwarzenegger films, True Lies.
Of course.
I figured that would be on your list somewhere.
That was on the short list, sir.
Like, it's kind of one of those things, like, I sometimes forget about this one, but then I remember it, and then I occasionally watch it, and I remember. This is a really good, fun, and pretty awesome spy film. It really is, and there's a lot of good stuff as an action movie, and really diverse character for Schwarzenegger as well. He gets to bounce some drama, some action, some comedy, remembering that, Maggie wasn't the first time he ever did something with action. Sorry, just to bring that up there. But no, it's just a really awesome movie. I think it's really one of Cameron's best, and maybe one of his more underrated ones, because people don't talk about it, but really a fantastic spy movie, just in general.
No, that is true. I think a lot of people don't remember that that's a James Cameron movie.
Yeah.
That's true.
They remember it as a Schwarzenegger movie for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's like the one James Cameron film that isn't effects heavy. Well, I mean, in comparison to like T2 or The Abyss.
Yeah, but there's still some pretty impressive action effects, though.
Oh, no question.
It's very well shot and edited. And
My number one is in the Mission Impossible series, and that is Ghost Protocol. As you all know, that's my favorite of the series.
no spy?
I like the Melissa McCarthy spy. And speaking of funny spies, I also thought about Top Secret. You ever see that with Val Kilmer?
I
of it.
haven't.
It's from the people that did Airplane and Naked Gun. It's the spy version of that.
No, I don't know about it.
Very funny. Probably 84, maybe 85.
Huh.
But no, I think at least for my money, since I'm only familiar with the Craig years of Bond, Mission Impossible is a more fun franchise. I think Tom Cruise does a fantastic job as Ethan Hunt. I think these movies are really great in terms of the spy equipment that they have, which, by the way, was not very present in Spectre. He had the watch.
I think that was supposed to be a joke. One of those jokes like, oh, what is Duke? They're not going to give him the awesome car. They give him an old school
Yeah, they
watch.
gave him like nothing.
Well, he did do something later.
Yeah.
Pretty standard thing for a watch to
fairly
do. Like,
standard.
keep time and,
But, you remember these Mission Impossible movies for the effects and such. And you did make a good point when we reviewed Rogue Nation. The villain in Ghost Protocol maybe is not up to par with a Philip Seymour Hoffman from 3, but for me, I enjoyed the Ghost Protocol.
Hoffman's the best villain. I mean, we all know that.
No, you're right on that. I can't deny it.
At least I remember him.
True.
I remember who he is.
I think Ghost Protocol is the one, though, that sort of solidified the franchise as, okay, this is a franchise to be reckoned with.
It's a pretty fun movie, and it had a lot of scope. I think it probably had the best stunts out of it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. All right, well, let's move on to our double feature of older films. Joe brought us an old classic, and that is in prep for The Hateful Eight coming out next month, and that is Jackie Brown.
That's right. Jackie Brown is a 1997 crime filler. Well, filler.
Whoa.
Some people might say it's filler. Oh. Crime thriller filmed, written, directed by Quentin Tarantino, of course. And it was an adaptation of the Elmore Leonard 1992 novel Rum Punch. It's the first and I believe the only adaptation that Tarantino's ever done. Right?
I believe that's true, yeah.
I guess it's reinterpretation. Well,
reinterpretation.
Direct adaptation anyway. And it stars Pam Grier. Now, this movie primarily pays homage, as Justin would say, to 1970s blaxploitation films, particularly the ones starring Pam Grier. Now, the film has a great cast, as usual. It got Robert Forster, Robert De Niro, Jackson, Bridget Fonda, the last major thing she ever did, and, of course, Michael Keaton. Now, Grier and Forster were both veteran actors at the time, but neither had really had starring roles in a while. This one really revitalized both their careers. And it also, I didn't know this, got a nomination for Forster for Best Supporting Actor.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the plot follows this middle-aged, down-on-her-luck stewardess, Jackie Brown, played by Pam Grier, who finds herself caught between federal agents and her boss, a ruthless arms dealer named Ordell, played by Jackson. With the help of her bail bondsman, played by Forster, she weaves a complicated plan to evade both authorities and Ordell's gang, and a whole lot more money than she had before. I've always loved Jackie Brown. Talked about it all the time. I mean...
It was about time you brought it.
Well, it had to happen. It's like one of my favorites. I love... From the opening, it starts off with, I just love that homage to The Graduate. You've got like Tarantino's love of movies apparent right from the get-go. You've got that great soundtrack right away. Definitely plays homage to blaxploitation films, but I think in kind of the most sophisticated way, because it's more subtle. It's not really as over the top. And I think one reason why I like this movie so much is because it proves that Tarantino can be more restrained This is really the only movie you get to see him be more restrained. And it's got a really awesome plot. It's got some of the most interesting editing chip points at certain times. And we actually were pointing out, there's this one scene where the deal goes down, and it's actually, you pointed this out, Justin, probably the most complicated scene he's ever filmed. I mean, just multiple layers there. But it's still got a lot of the Tarantino staples, even though it's not directly from him. It's very much his movie. Some great iconic lines, great performances. Really a very good plot. But I think at its core, I love the charm of the story. And I really love Pam Grier as Jackie Brown. I think she's a great character as a leading lady. I do.
Yeah.
He's laughing. I think she's really one of the best female characters I've ever seen. She's both vulnerable and she can be badass at the same time. And really got me interested in her. I just think it's a wonderful film. And I think it's a little underrated. I leave it with an A+.
Wow. All right. High praise. Justin, how about for you?
The one Tarantino that isn't a homebrew, which is both awesome and kind of strange at the exact same time. Just knowing how much he tries to go for his own original things.
Interesting.
If the viewer is able to look past the fact that Tarantino basically made a blaxploitation film, there's a really engrossing character study filled with these fascinating characters that keep a slow burn lively and with a great soundtrack. But with Tarantino, would you expect any less?
No, that's kind of goes with the territory, right?
Admittedly, sometimes I think it goes on longer than it should.
Maybe a little bit.
But with characters this intriguing and a storyline that keeps moving, it's well worth it. I just wish there was a bit more time shortened to focus it out a little bit.
Okay.
To bring it to life more and keep it flowing.
It is long. I can do that.
I used to consider this one my least favorite, but it definitely gets better on repeats. I leave Jackie Brown with a B+.
What did you think of it originally?
I thought it was good, but I'll be honest, the fact that it was an adaptation kind of bothered me a little bit.
Why?
Because I like when Tarantino's doing his own thing.
This is the argument that comes up all the time.
Well, I'm intrigued before I get to my review.
That's okay. It's a good question. I like the fact that he has all these original storylines, and the fact that he decided, okay, this is going to be from a novel this time. I just found myself staring at the screen going, this is good, but I don't really feel like I'm watching a Tarantino movie.
Like I said, I think it's more restrained, but I think it's definitely a Tarantino movie.
Well, that's going to lead into my review, actually. So We'll discuss this in a second, but this might be the least Tarantino film I've seen.
Which is why people don't like it.
There's the 70s soundtrack.
Yeah.
There's some time shifting, like you mentioned, Joe, towards the end.
A little bit.
Use of actors that had been out of the spotlight a few years or longer.
True.
But maybe it's that it is an adaptation rather than an original piece, that there's a lot less brutal violence than in some of his other films.
People don't like that.
A lot less Tarantino-isms.
Yep.
But honestly, Justin, for me, I think that's its crowning achievement. That he can do both.
He can break away from it.
The characters here drive the story rather than the clever one-liners peppered in Tarantino's earlier films.
Or the violence.
Or the violence as well. But that is the question. Is that why this film is not talked about? I honestly would rank it right up there with Tarantino's best. Hey. It's not quite an A+ for me, Joe.
Okay.
But the characters are fantastic. The situations are riveting. I like the mystery component.
Yeah.
Bridget Fonda's character is
a little iffy.
A little iffy. She's fairly useless until the last portion of the film. So either give her more to do or, I don't know, have the end do something different. And at nearly 3 hours, I do think it's a little bit long.
It is
but surprisingly not much.
Yeah.
Like when I first saw Django, as you'll remember, I was in the B+ camp for that because I thought it was way too long.
Which surprised me.
I thought it should have ended about 40 minutes before it did. And then when we watched it again for New Classic, I got a really renewed perspective on it. Mm-hmm. Here I didn't have that. It's almost a 3-hour movie, and it's maybe 10 minutes too long.
Well, I'll tell you guys.
That's it.
I'll tell you guys something interesting about Jackie Brown, though.
What's that?
I was looking doing some research trying to gauge people's perspectives on the movie, and when people would list their favorite Tarantino movies, Jackie Brown is either towards the bottom or the top. It's never in the middle.
That's a very good point.
That's interesting.
It's never in the middle.
And Justin, I guess it would be towards the bottom then for you.
I can understand that.
Probably like...
Because a B+ for Tarantino really would be towards the bottom.
That's pretty low, right?
It would probably be like mid-tier.
Well, Django's worse for you.
Really? Wait, I forget. What'd you give Django?
It would probably go Jackie Brown, Django, Death Proof.
Okay.
But I mean,
Death Proof is the one I still have not seen.
That's the one people generally consider to be, like, bad.
Yeah. I've seen everything else, including Four Rooms.
In all truth, though, I do actually like Death Proof. It's just...
I think Death Proof's fine. Mm. But, it's when you're it's just not one of
When you're
Tarantino's.
comparing it to Pulp Fiction and
Yeah,
Inglourious Basterds, it doesn't hold up.
It doesn't
No,
hold
is what
up.
you're saying.
Exactly. I just think Jackie Brown. I mean, it's not like you hear people bashing it or anything. It's
No,
just that
you either hear them loving it or not talking about it at all.
that's pretty much right.
know.
But here's the one thing I've noticed a lot of.
Yeah.
The people who love Jackie Brown have like seen it 8-10 times.
Oh, I'm not gonna lie.
It's-
Joe's a huge fan.
I
Oh, yeah.
I love this movie, and I watch it, and I just find myself so engrossed by the story, and I really like the characters, and I just and I like the fact that it is a little different than Tarantino, and I love Tarantino's, wacky violence and his crazy time shifting, but the fact that this is so restrained and long and still flows so well, I think is great.
I think it speaks to his ability
As a director.
even then, because this was less than 10 years after his debut.
And I have another theory, guys, and I'm sure you guys
What's
might,
that?
might be able to agree with this.
Okay.
One reason why Jackie Brown might not be as loved is because guess what it followed?
Pulp Fiction,
Exactly.
right? Yeah.
I mean, it's the same classic story. Whenever you lead with your most successful movie, what can follow that?
No, you're right. But that strikes a chord with another famous first-time director from '94. I know Pulp Fiction was his second, but Clerks, which was followed by Mallrats, which at the time was hated. And now it's looked upon quite fondly because
It's got cult following.
because there's some perspective now. We're 20 years after the fact, and people that are discovering Clerks and Mallrats together don't really know, oh yeah, Clerks was this huge big thing, and then came Mallrats. Same thing here.
Yeah.
Pulp Fiction, yes, was, oh my god, it's Pulp Fiction.
Masterpiece, but what about Jackie Brown? Let's talk about Jackie Brown.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Well, for me, it's an A.
Well, that's good.
What a movie.
It's a great movie.
There are very few films, and a lot of them are Tarantino's on the list, that are almost at that 3-hour range that I don't get bored with, or,
Why do you guys think that is? Is it the characters? Is it the editing?
I think it's one of those. The filmmaker is trying to pull a holier than thou, and forget that if you're going to give us this super long, epic scale film, you got to make it worth the experience.
It's true. Yeah.
Well, but for me, that is one of the strengths of Titanic, to bring that up again, is that, I've seen it God knows how many times, and at 3+ hours, I'm still never once for a second bored with that movie. And Tarantino sort of taps into that as well.
It's hard to be bored with the Tarantino movie.
It is. And like I said, this movie maybe could be trimmed by 5 or 10 minutes, but it's not that overly long.
Not really.
No. All right, well, what a pick, Joe. And we'll
call.
revisit Tarantino again, of course, in about a month's time.
And will that be my favorite then?
Will?
Hard to say.
Well, it's either best or worst.
We've already established that's when we're going to do our top 5 Tarantino. So
Well, we couldn't.
I
do
guess
it
we'll figure it
with
out.
Jackie Brown.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna do it.
All right, so we closed the show with the Oscar A to Z. This time around, that's the Battle of Algiers. It's a 1966 film nominated for Best Foreign Language Film. And then, oddly enough, 2 years later, it got nominated for Best Director and Best Original Screenplay. Justin?
In a film commissioned by the Algerian government, the Battle of Algiers depicts the Algerian Revolution from the dual perspective of the French Foreign Legion and of the Algerians. Shown in episodic moments over the course of time, the film shows the loss and devastation found on both sides, sometimes resorting to ugly tactics such as bombing and torture. Now, I was a little bit surprised to find that this was funded by the Algerian government and surprisingly doesn't glorify war. The handling of the storyline will more or less be love it or hate it, and some of these scenes, because they're so episodic, are better than others. Yeah. But the film has a really raw sense of humanity. It's very grounded, it's very gritty, and I like that. Does it always work? Are there a couple scenes that can be trimmed down? Definitely. But I think the fact that they're saying, okay, there are good guys and bad guys on both sides, and both have a motivation, is really interesting. I really do appreciate that, especially for when this came out. However, while that originality is certainly felt, I feel like the build-up through all these little moments, ultimately culminating in a kind of anticlimactic coda, is a little disappointing. And what could have been a really interesting and groundbreaking film, I think is just pretty good. I leave the Battle of Algiers with a B+.
Well, I think that you said it. I mean, first of all, I didn't know it was funded by the government. That's weird. But I liked that the movie never gets too heavy-handed. It has a general war is bad ethos, but it doesn't really tilt you on either way. It's just sort of saying, look, war's bad for everybody. These are the results of it. This is what happens. I think the directing here is great. I really liked the documentary style of it. It sort of has this timelessness as well. I mean, I think the messages that it hands off can be used today in Afghanistan or North Korea or wherever. Mm-hmm. And man, it's brutal.
Ridiculously brutal for its time.
Ridiculously brutal.
It's hard to believe.
So I do have to give it a few points for that, and I do have to give it points for being so timeless some 50 years after the fact. But what's bad about the movie is that it does have no discernible story. It's just these vignettes, and because of that, and because of the general themes of the movie, there's no specific protagonist. It's just sort of...
This is what happened.
Yeah, like, which of these two people are going to pick up the gun and shoot? We don't know. And as such, it does drag a little bit, loses the focus a bit. But I'm with you, Justin. I give it a B+ as well. I really had to bump it up a little bit for those couple things. Joe?
Yeah, I mean, I think that whenever you're talking about war, let's be honest, there's a lot of terrible stuff that can happen.
Absolutely.
And I think that this movie is definitely very honest about that, and I thought the documentary style did kind of work. And I kind of really loved and hated the vignettes at the same time, because I think that probably the best thing about this movie is to show that brutality. I think that just the violence is so ahead of its time for that. It was very surprising, and it was brutal. And, you didn't know who was going to die when. And to show that lack of humanity because of that, you didn't have time to get to know anybody. And that was very tragic. But also kind of hurts the film, because if you're telling a fictionalized account of something and there is no discernible protagonist to care about, because literally they could show up and in the same scene die, it's hard to get too attached. Mm-hmm. So it kind of works both for and against it. But overall, I thought it was paced pretty well. Maybe a little too long. I'm a little below you guys. I leave it with a B.
Okay. Yeah, I was very torn on that issue, because I want to have someone to root for, but I also appreciated that they didn't choose sides.
Believe me, I get why they did that, but that's why I almost feel like it would have been better maybe as a short film.
I would agree with that.
I don't know. This is one of those that I'm actually okay with the way they chose to go about it. Does the fact that there isn't like a real straightforward storyline kind of bug me at times? Yes, but at the same time, I feel like it wouldn't be as original without it.
To be honest, I think that it's one of those things where if you were in Algeria in 1967, this probably would have been like a huge groundbreaking experience. It would have meant a lot more. But
easily.
I don't have that connection, obviously, so I'm trying to give it the benefit of a doubt.
Yeah, I sort of gave it the benefit of the doubt by sort of placing it in like today's mindset and today's war-torn countries and everything, and just thought, okay, well,
yeah,
you could have the same movie, be set in Afghanistan today or whatever.
But the thing is, the difference between now and then, I have to imagine they would give us characters we would know and care about a little more, so the deaths would be more impactful.
Well, but they would also give it, obviously if Americans were making it, they would give it the American sniper sort of slant.
Well, pretty much.
It
Go America.
Depends on the director, but I guess if it's funded by the government, that is pretty surprising.
Yeah, that did surprise me. I didn't know that about it.
But I also like that raw nature of it. I don't know if we necessarily needed characters, but I feel like a little bit of build-up leading into that, giving us more context.
Context is the big thing.
would have made a world of difference.
Well, and that's the thing. I think watching at the time, you'd know what's going on. Right. I'll be honest, I still am not entirely sure what was happening. I mean, there's a civil war or rebellion of some kind.
Warring for independence, basically.
And I guess it could be anywhere, which is good. But at the same time, this particular situation.
Right. But if you're gonna not have a set protagonist or whatever, and just do these vignettes, or not show, this side's good, this side's bad, then show us, say like two families from each side. And have us follow that, or whatever.
That's possible.
Maybe it's more conventional. I'll give you that, but I think it would help care a little bit more about what happens. Mm-hmm. All right, well, that is going to wrap up the show for this week. Joe, a lot of things popping on the Merlin channel. I saw you started the Monday news segments again.
I did that early in the year, and I want to get back to that. But I think I'm going to try and do a podcast. Try to keep it a little bit shorter, and if I'll try to do news, and I might just do random things just to give myself a break from all the other video production I'm doing.
Okay, right on.
Yeah, always good stuff.
Yeah, and boldly going, of course, with the three of us talking about the various Star Trek episodes.
Oh yeah, the people seem to like those.
Good. All right, well, and you can subscribe to our channel if you have not done so already. And you can also join us on the Facebook group, Film Fanatics with an exclamation point, and the Twitter feed at Film Fanatics Pod. And every month we do a listener's choice, and we have a lot of new picks for that. So can't thank you guys enough, and keep them coming. Let us know what movies you'd like to see us review here on the show. As a reminder, December is going to be holiday month, and then January is guilty pleasure month. So if any of your choices fall into those two categories, definitely get them to us sooner rather than later. So thanks a lot for listening, and we'll see you back here next week. Bye.